Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Brother and sister, welcome back to Islamic Notes channel. This young man who graduated from the Islamic boarding school was challenged to a debate by an arrogant priest. The heated debate lasted from morning to night. Whoever lost would convert, and in fact, many of the audience also converted to the truth. Let's listen to the full story. That morning, the small town field, which was usually quiet, turned into a sea of people. Hundreds of people gathered with enthusiastic faces, waiting for the event that had been a hot topic for weeks. Amidst the hustle and bustle of the audience's voices, a stage appeared with a banner that read, "Open Debate on the Truth." Pastor Anonius, a middle-aged man with a confident face, stood on the stage in a neat suit, speaking in a loud tone. "Today I will prove to everyone that the Quran is just a book full of contradictions. If anyone dares to defend it, please come forward," he said, pointing at the crowd. His voice echoed, creating a tense atmosphere among the audience. In the midst of the sudden silence, a young man stepped forward from the crowd. He wore simple clothes with a turban neatly wrapped around his head. In a soft but firm voice, he said, "I am a student who graduated from the Islamic boarding school. With Allah's permission, I will defend the truth." The priest folded his arms and looked at the young man with a mocking smile. "You? A young man like you wants to challenge me? Age is wisdom," he said. "Sir, what matters is how we use the wisdom given to us. If you are willing, let us begin," replied the young man calmly. His calm response immediately silenced the laughter among the audience. The atmosphere became more tense as the crowd began to draw closer to the stage, hoping to witness something extraordinary. Some of the Muslim spectators appeared anxious. How could a simple young man like him challenge a pastor renowned for his intelligence? They wondered. Antonius stepped forward, sweeping his gaze over the audience. "All of you bear witness. Whoever loses in this debate must embrace the religion of his opponent. This is not just an argument. This is a matter of faith." His statement was met with cheers from most of the Christian audience, while the Muslims could only pray silently in their hearts. Without fear, the young man looked Antonius straight in the eye. "Very well, sir, but I have one request. Let us debate with manners, without cursing or belittling. Shouldn't seeking the truth be done with a clean heart?" For a moment, Antonius was silent, but he quickly returned to his arrogant demeanor. "All right, but don't expect me to let you off easily. Get ready to lose, young man." The crowd became increasingly divided. On one side, Antonius' supporters were confident that he would easily refute the young man's arguments. On the other side, some began to feel curious about who this young man really was, daring to challenge such a prominent figure. The young man, Fari, stepped forward and took a place in the middle of the stage. From his face, there was not the slightest trace of fear. "In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful," he murmured softly. This was not about pride. It was about truth. The morning wind carried a chill, and the tension in the air was palpable. All eyes were now focused on the two figures on the stage. "Good," said Fari in a low tone but full of confidence. "Let us begin." And with that, the first round of the debate commenced, taking everyone present on a journey that would change their lives forever. Pastor Antonius started the debate with confident steps. He stood straight in front of Fari, looking at the young man with a mocking glint in his eyes. His voice boomed across the field. "Breaking through the crowd, all of you are here as witnesses. Let's start with a simple question. O youth, explain to us all. How is it possible for a book like the Quran, which you believe is a revelation, to be seen as a book of war and killing, where love is taught?" Antonius paused, scanning the audience before continuing. "How do you reconcile the verses that call for the killing of infidels? Doesn't that show your religion is one of violence?" he asked in a mocking tone. Fari remained calm. With confidence, he answered, "The verses you refer to must be seen in context, sir. During the time of the Prophet Muhammad, Muslims were attacked and given permission to defend themselves. But even in war, Islam teaches compassion. The Prophet forbade killing women, children, and the elderly, and he instructed not to destroy crops. This shows that war in Islam is highly controlled and only permitted as a last resort. Antonius, annoyed by the answer, snapped back. Ah, is that so? What about the prophets' marriages? Were they not an exploitation of women? Fari responded with a steady tone. Sir, most of the prophets' marriages were to protect widows and orphans, suffering in difficult circumstances, or to unite warring tribes. These actions were for the benefit of the people, not for personal gain. The audience fell silent again, contemplating his words. Antonius tried to find another angle. So, how is it possible that your book claims to be the final revelation when there are so many things that don't make sense in it? For example, the scientific errors. Fari smiled patiently and said, God is not limited by physical form, nor does he need to be seen to be close to his creation. He is closer to us than our own veins. Proof of his existence is in every creation. The Quran is not a book of science, but a book of guidance. Its verses encourage reflection and inquiry, which have inspired countless advancements in science throughout history. Antonius was silent for a moment, clearly frustrated by the answer, but unwilling to concede. He glanced at the audience, noticing that their interest in his arguments was waning. Fari, on the other hand, stood calmly, letting the silence emphasize the power of truth. As the sun reached its zenith, Fari addressed Antonius with a calm smile. Sir, perhaps this is the right time to pause for rest? I owe my duty to God and must perform my prayer. Let us continue this discussion afterward. Antonius narrowed his eyes, sensing an opportunity to attack. Are you afraid? Using prayer as an excuse to escape? Fari shook his head slightly, his voice steady. Sir, I do not fear humans. Prayer is not an escape, but a source of peace, strength, and guidance. Allow me to fulfill this obligation, and I will return with a clearer mind. Fari descended from the stage with calm steps, ignoring the murmurs from Antonius' supporters. Look at him, run away, unprepared to face our pastor. Someone jeered from the crowd. A few spectators laughed mockingly, but Fari was unfazed. He walked to a quiet corner of the field to perform the Dur prayer, leaving Antonius standing with his arms crossed in a smug expression. He's only delaying the inevitable, Antonius said to the audience. The crowd began to shift, some still supporting Antonius while others silently pondered Fari's words. His patience, calm demeanor, and thoughtful answers had started to sow seeds of doubt in the minds of a few. Loud cheers were heard when his argument began to waver. He chose to run away. If he had strong convictions, why should the crowd stop hearing Antonius' taunts? But some Muslim spectators began to get restless in the Rirsan Patak. I only see his obligation as this Buandai Takut man to Allah, someone whispered. A man who truly believes in his religion will not leave the debate when he is being tested. This shows weakness. Meanwhile, Fari had found a fairly clean place in the corner of the field. He opened the small prayer mat he brought and faced the Qibla. Without being disturbed by the sounds around him, he began to perform the Suhoor prayer with full solemnity. His movements were calm, and his face radiated deep tranquility. Some Christian spectators, watching from afar, began to fall silent. They observed him with curiosity, trying to understand what made the young man so calm amidst such great pressure. One of the older women sitting near the stage whispered to her friend, "Look at his face, like he's not afraid of anything." On the other hand, Antonius tried to maintain his influence in front of the audience. "My brothers," he said, "this is the time to see who really has the truth. If he doesn't come up with a stronger argument, then that is proof his belief has wavered." But something unexpected began to happen. The audience, who had previously cheered for Antonius, now began to look doubtful, remembering Fari's sharp reasoning. Despite Antonius's fiery attacks and criticism, Fari remained composed. Annoyed, Antonius said, "Seb, don't make me call him many times." The question provoked a little laughter from some of the audience. Fari, however, was not offended. He answered with a small smile, "Sir Pastor, let me answer after prayer. Prayer is our way to keep remembering Allah throughout the day. In the Quran, Surah Taha verse 14, Allah says, 'Establish prayer to remember me.' Allah is not far away. Humans often forget him. Prayer is our way of keeping our hearts close to him." Fari's answer made the atmosphere quiet again. The Christian audience, previously skeptical, now began to look at him with curiosity. Antonius, although visibly shaken, tried to cover his nervousness with a stiff smile. But deep down he felt something he had never felt before, an unsettling doubt. Fari looked at Antonius confidently and said, "The Quran that Allah revealed to the Prophet Muhammad is miraculous, not only because of its contents, full of advice and guidance, but also because of its scientific wisdom and its influence on humanity." Antonius chuckled nervously. "Of course. Explain. I want to hear how you make the book look so extraordinary." Fari stepped forward to approach the microphone. In the Quran, Surah Al-Anbiya, verse 30, Allah says, "Do not those who disbelieve know that the heavens and the earth were of one piece? Then we separated them and made every living thing from water. Why do they not believe?" This verse explains the origin of the universe, known in science as the Big Bang Theory, and the importance of water for life. How could a prophet who lived in the Arabian desert, far from the development of modern science, know this? Oh. The crowd began to whisper among themselves. This knowledge, revealed over 1,400 years ago, was only understood by humanity thousands of years after this verse was revealed. Is this not proof that the Quran comes from the all-knowing God? Pastor Antonius swallowed hard, unable to respond. His saliva. He tried to interrupt, but Fari continued in a stronger tone, grasping the audience's full attention. "Not only that, Mr. Pastor," Fari said, "the Quran also contains moral guidance, law, and guidelines for life that are relevant throughout time. Surah Al-Hujurat removes discrimination, something even the modern world is still struggling to achieve." The audience was silent. Some of them began to nod as if acknowledging the truth of Fari's words. Antonius, who was usually responsive to his opponent's arguments, this time could only stand stiffly, trying to find a gap to reply. But Fari was not finished. "And about the beauty of the language of the Quran," he continued, "Arabic language experts admit that no one can match the beauty and accuracy of its style. This book, the Quran, in Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 23, Allah challenges, 'And if you are in doubt about what we have sent down upon our servant Muhammad, then produce a surah the like thereof.' Up to now, no one has succeeded in meeting this challenge." He paused, allowing his words to sink in, then continued, "And science has affirmed the truth of the Quran. In Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 2, Allah states, 'This is the book about which there is no doubt, a guidance for those conscious of Allah. Those who seek the truth with a clean heart will find the answer.'" Like a final blow, Antonius's face turned tense. His hand moved restlessly in a circle. He tried to maintain his composure, but the truth in Fari's words was like a tidal wave, crashing against every wall of doubt he had built over the years. On the other side, Fari stood calm, his face radiating peace. He looked at Antonius and then spoke in a softer tone. "Sir Pastor, you have asked me many questions about my religion, and with God's permission, I have answered them. Now let me ask you something. What is the purpose of human life according to your belief?" That question surprised Antonius. He didn't expect Fari to ask a counter question. He hesitated but eventually responded, his voice loud though slightly shaking. "The purpose of human life is to receive God's love and spread love to others. That is the core of our teachings." Fari smiled slightly. "I agree that love for others is important. But what about the relationship between humans and their Creator? How do we show our love and submission to God other than just accepting His love?" Antonius was silent. He knew that in his belief, the vertical relationship with God was emphasized through faith alone. However, before he could answer, Fahri continued, "In Islam, the purpose of human life is to worship Allah. In Surah Ad-Dhariyat, verse 56, Allah says, 'And I did not create the jinn and mankind except to worship me.' This worship does not only involve prayer and supplication, but also encompasses every aspect of life, being honest in dealings, taking care of others, and striving for goodness. All these forms of worship show our respect and submission to the Creator." For those who previously supported Antonius, several Christians began whispering among themselves, discussing Fari's argument, which made so much sense. Antonius, now increasingly restless, tried to strike back. "If so, explain to me, why are there so many differences of opinion in Islam? Doesn't that show the imperfection of your teachings? Fahri nodded slowly after hearing the question. Appeasement of opinion is part of Allah's grace. The Islamic priest gave me a message, and the issue of Allah, who is this? This is the believer. Take care of yourself. It will not harm you if people go astray when you have received guidance. This shows that our duty is to try to keep ourselves in the truth, even though others may choose the wrong path, the priest said. The answer left Antonius lost for words. He tried to speak, but his voice felt paralyzed, and his eyes began to show flashes of doubt that grew larger. Yet he stood with his head held high, trying to maintain his authority. Fahri saw this and said, Sir Priest, I have no desire to convince you. I just want to show the truth. If you find my argument reasonable, it is not because of me, but because of Allah, who knows all. He continued, If you have doubt, then remember Allah, the Almighty, and Muhammad, his messenger. Truth comes from Allah, not from me. Fahri bowed her head in praise of Allah. In humility, she knew the truth did not come from her, but from Allah, who had given guidance to the faithful. In the midst of this atmosphere, full of emotion, the victory was not only from the argument, but from the power of truth. This truth turned hatred into love and pride into submission. The truth finally prevailed, bringing a light that shone into the hearts of those present. This is the end of our video. If you enjoy Islamic content like this, don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next video.